In today's video, we're going to talk about what I love about clipless pedals. If you watched my other video, you know that I ride clipless pedals and flats. And today I'm going to talk about what I love about clipless pedals. There are so many things. Clipless pedals are awesome. I'm so glad they're invented. The way clipless pedals work is your shoe has a cleat on it. It goes into the clip, you step in, and it's like a ski binding. It clicks in, and your shoe is attached. Let's see if I can do this by hand. There we go. Your shoe is attached. It doesn't, there's a few degrees of rotation, of float, and then when you twist your heel, it unclicks. This has many advantages. One, you can pull up on the upstroke and utilize a completely different set of muscles in your legs. That means way less fatigue. When I ride flats, it's all quads and calves because I'm just able to push down and my legs get tired faster. When I ride clipless pedals, I'm engaging my hamstrings, my glutes more, and the load is spread across all of my leg. That means I can go a lot farther without overusing one muscle group. So for long rides or where I want to go faster and be more efficient, I always use my clipless pedals. Now, because clipless pedals clip in, there's a little bit of a learning curve to finding where that cleat is, putting it in, getting out when you need to, but it's not as hard as you think. My wife just released a really cool video about her first day on clipless pedals. I recommend you click the link up there and go watch it because it puts a really good perspective on it from a new person's perspective. Another cool thing about clipless pedals is your foot is always in the same exact spot. You don't have to worry if you were a little crooked when you set it down or if you were a little too toes forward or heels back. It's always the same. Now that means you might have to adjust this and get this just right, and I recommend you do. Don't just set it in the middle and forget it and assume that's good because it's the average of what everyone needs. That's not true. It's like back when I can't remember the year, they were testing fighter pilots to build the fighter pilot seat, and they took every single human and averaged their height and their waist and their shoulders and all that and built a seat based on the average, and it turned out it fit nobody because nobody is actually average shaped. So don't assume that just because these have a middle spot, that middle's where you should be all the time. Cleat setup is super important, and I recommend you either work with a fitter or experiment with different kinds of things to do that. Let's talk a little bit more about cleats. We use SPD pedals, which are made by Shimano. They're probably the most common clipless pedals, and there are other great options out there too, but I'm going to talk about those today. Shimano's, most people don't know this, but they actually have two different cleats. This is the SM56, which is a multi-release cleat. It has a little M on it, and it's silver. And this is the Shimano SH51, the regular cleat. The multi-release cleat allows you to pull your foot out at more angles, so it stays clipped in less, which is great for people learning or people that are scared they're not going to be able to get out. So I always recommend people start with these. I use the regular SH51 cleats, and they're fine for me because that's all I knew when I was a kid when I started doing this. But I'm glad to know that these exist. Usually these are silver, usually these are black, but you can't always go by that alone. You need to look at the model number, which is stamped on there. Let's take a real close look at the difference in these. There's very, very few differences. This is the multi-release, this is the SH51. Right here you can see they've carved out these little ramps which will make release a little more ramped and a little bit easier. Whereas right here they've got a square edge. And on this side, the main thing I've noticed, these look a little bit more rounded on the corners where these are sharper. And apart from that, there's very, very little difference. So both work with both pedals, but this one is designed with this ramped surface right here to allow you to come out at more awkward angles if you're trying to pull your foot back on accident or up instead of click out. So if you want to get out easier, use this. If you want to stay in more, use this one. Now, clipless shoes are also very different from flat pedal shoes. Even though these are the same brand, 510, they couldn't be more different from my flat pedal shoes. These shoes have a carbon shank all the way throughout them. You cannot bend the toe. Because you're stepping all your force on this tiny little 1" by 1" cleat, If these were soft shoes, you would feel a ton of pressure there behind the ball of your foot, and it would make your feet go numb, they would fall asleep, you would feel pain. I remember back in the early 90s when clipless shoes were coming out, a lot of shoes had soft soles and people would go completely numb riding them. So we have a stiff shank through the whole foot. So that means when you pedal, the entire foot surface is your pedal. There's no pressure anywhere on there. That means you can deliver more power and more efficiently. Unfortunately, it always also means it's tricky when you're off the bike and you're walking, because these are the worst shoes to walk in because they don't rotate. If you're going up a hill on the balls of your feet, you can't really do that with these shoes. With some shoes you can, and I recommend you try a whole bunch of different things. These are about as stiff as they get. There's a couple like those CD, XE, or road shoes are even stiffer. And then there's some that are more like trail runners that are more forgiving if you're walking a lot, but they're not going to be quite as efficient. So you kind of need to find the balance there. Fortunately, these shoes have sticky rubber on the bottom. So when I am off the bike and I'm riding, they at least have grip. They don't flex well, and I don't want to walk more than 50 feet at a time in these if I can help it, but that's pretty important. Also, when shopping for clipless shoes, I recommend something where the cleat sits below the surface of the shoe. Otherwise, when you walk into the store or you walk around your house or you're off your bike walking your bike, the cleat is contacting everything and you're just walking on the cleats. That's very slippery, it wears your cleats out, and it's scary. So I like having the cleats a little more recessed. Now, some clipless pedals have cages around them to different levels. These ones are kind of the more minimalist ones. Some of them have pins you can extract and make them contact your shoe. So not only do you have the clip-in benefit, but the rubber is stuck into those pins. That's all personal preference. My advice for your first time going clipless is buy a cheap $30 set of Shimano SPD pedals and buy some really good shoes that fit you. Go try a whole bunch of shoes on at different shops. And then run the easy cleats, the multi-release cleats, the SH56. Learn how to do those just like my wife did in her video, and go from there. Now the pedals can also be adjusted. On Shimano SPDs, you have an adjustment on each side, and that adjusts the spring tension. That adjusts how hard it is to clip in and out. So I recommend setting it pretty loose as a beginner. Not too loose, because then it's so loose you can't even tell if you've clipped in. But you'll find that happy balance. I usually do it about 3 or 4 clicks tighter than fully loose for new riders, and then they can practice clipping in and clipping out. So clipless pedals, I love them for technical climbs. I love them for long climbs when I'm out of the saddle and I'm just cranking and I may not have time to shift, or I come up on a tricky move. I can just generate power and acceleration so quickly on these. It ramps up quickly. I don't have to worry about my feet possibly coming off. I'm able to engage different muscles, and so I can climb harder things on clips. There are some climbs I can only get on clips. Not very many, but there are some, and clips do provide an advantage to get me up them. I also like being able to lift my rear wheel with my body. Now I know how to do it with flats as well, and I always recommend you learn that skill on flats to develop proper scooping technique and weighting and balance. But when you are on clips, you can just be so much more efficient. When you come up to that ledge, you get the front up and then you just kind of hop and the wheel comes with you. That is super nice. I also like being able to push a harder gear. So on flat pedals, I have to be in the perfect gear. I'll try something, not make it, go back, shift 1 gear harder, then I'll make it. On the clips, I'm usually running 2, maybe 3 gears harder than I would on flat pedals, because I'm able to just crank through and muscle through them, because I can pull up, I can almost come to a stop and then re-accelerate again, and the amount of power you have on the pedals is incredible. So I'm a big fan of clips. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, post them in the comments below. Let's not turn this into a clips versus flat pedal debate. I have another video that talks about that. If you'd like to learn more about my thoughts, I've ridden both for over 15 years, and I still ride both today. So most people that compare clips and flats have a strong preference for one and have tried the other one a little bit. I've tried both my whole life, and so I've got over 15, 20 years on each setup, and I love sharing my thoughts about it, especially for new riders who are a little bit confused. Thanks for watching. Go check out those videos over here and click on those to watch them. Thanks for watching. There's a party in the mountains, and you're invited.